Welcome to Freya's Fairy Tales, where we believe fairy tales are both stories we enjoyed as children and something that we can achieve ourselves. Each week, we will talk to authors about their favorite fairy tales when they were kids and their adventure holding their very own fairy tale in their hands. At the end of each episode, we will finish off with a fairy tale or short story read as close to the original author's version as possible. I am your host, Freya Victoria. I'm an audiobook narrator that loves reading fairy tales, novels, and bringing stories to life through narration. I'm also fascinated by talking to authors and learning about their why and how for creating their stories. We have included all of the links for today's author and our show in the show notes. Today is part 2 of 2, where we are talking to Nichole about her novels. Over these 2 weeks, you will have heard about her journey of writing since she was a kid, adapting fan fiction to full-sized novels, using people you know as inspiration for your characters, working through writer's block, writing with kids, and building your team. Heart of Conviction, Nathan. Nathan Valentine had given up from ever finding love. Instead, he dedicated himself to being the best doctor he could be, so no one ever felt the pain he had endured. Sadie Mosey was a single mom with another on the way. She only thought about how she was going to survive to the next day. Can they help each other overcome the pain of their pasts? So back to your book. So you're working on Mason's story now. When do you think you're going to have his story finished?
So my goal is to have his story out this year.
Okay.
His story, and then I also have another story I want out this year.
Not related?
Not related. It's completely different, and I actually have more words written for it than I do for Mason's. But I think it's because it's not conviction series. Well, I think when you get so obsessed with something for so many years,
Yeah.
that's part of my blockage. So I started working on other projects that I've thought about, and I fell in love with this one, and so it's been easy to write.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I hit that moment of every time, I feel like every author has this moment where you just go, oh, okay, now.
Well, that's why I
Especially if you're a
say,
pantser. You're a
yeah.
pantser, you hit that moment.
Well, that's for my one book. I'm like 30,000 words in, and I have not said I'm scrapping it. I'm putting it on pause until I can get this other thing out of my head, and then I'll,
Yes.
reread back through it and start again. Not
Yeah.
start over, but I'll need to read through it to remind myself, what did I write? Like,
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah.
So
So
are you planning on both books releasing this year?
that's my goal. But
Okay.
for sure, I want Mason's story out this year. He's waited long enough. He needs to be out in the world. But I'd like both stories out this year.
Okay.
If I'm able to keep going the way I'm going, and considering that I have 2 weeks in July where my kids are down with my in-laws for 2 weeks, I think
Oof.
that'd be I'm so I love my sister-in-law Tia.
But
Taking
that's
all
free
three.
time. Free time for you.
That is, and I can take my laptop and go other places to write because
Yeah.
I like no one talks about it, but sitting at home and writing is not as productive as everyone thinks.
Or for you. For some people, that may be what
Maybe
works.
if yeah, if they have an actual office, I do not, I guess, but I
I
know a
write
lot
on
of
my
my
couch.
you have how many kids do you have?
I have one.
Yeah, see, I have 3. And
Yeah, and
also
she's 7, but she pretty much takes care of herself. Like, um, I homeschool, so, like, I have to do that, but homeschooling doesn't take very, very smart kids, so, like, it doesn't take long for us to get through it every day. And we actually do 4-day school weeks, so, like, it doesn't take us long to get through, and then because I'm narrating for most of my day, she
yeah,
I don't believe in limiting screen time. She's a very active kid though, so she'll
same.
play games for a little while and then she goes off and does something. But, we do limit screen time. Like today, her task is your room needs to be cleaned and then you can play video games. I don't like it. It's such a big mess. Well, it's your mess, so clean it up.
Yeah, my oldest son he'll be turning 9 next month, and he's neurodivergent. We've gotten dyslexia and ADHD. I'm pretty sure he's on the spectrum, but where we live, it's literally like pulling teeth and nails to
Mhm.
get that diagnosis. So I'm going through the process. But anyways, with him, I have to do that kind of reward system. Like, oh, you have to poop today. If you don't, if you want your phone, you need to poop. You want your phone, like I have to do this weird reward based system with him. But
Yeah.
like once he gets it, I don't limit that screen time because he's earned it,
Yeah.
But like he needs a lot of work. And then I got my 2-year-old daughter who's
2.
she's
So,
2. But I'm also like currently right now I'm also a single mom right now. So it's just a lot.
yeah.
So that's also why I'm like 2 weeks and I can leave the house because I won't have to. I need to
Yeah.
leave the house.
Yeah, I have, a week at the end of July where she's gonna be with my grandparents, and, but I have, like, narrating stuff that I have to do, so I'm like, I have to be in this closet for that week. So
Well, but like I don't think as writing as work
Mhm.
by myself because I'm like I don't have to. I turn my brain off to everything else,
Well, and
and I
that's
could
why
just
I
be there.
started doing this. So I have a day job, which is mostly an on-call type situation. So usually this time of year during the summer, it's busier, but I can pause narrating and go do that. So prior to September of last year, when I started narrating, I would just sit on my couch, either binge watching Netflix or reading books. And several times had looked up, like, is there something I can be, like, making money while binge watching Netflix or reading books? And finally in September came across a TikTok for narrating and learned how to, get into that because I've always read with the voices and all of that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
like,
not good
let's
at. You
oh,
guys, narrators are absolutely amazing. I could never do it.
well, I
Like,
know a lot
yeah,
of them, a lot of narrators have like either acting backgrounds, like went to school for acting or singing, or like there's one narrator I know went to school for opera and she now
yes,
narrates audiobooks. And I'm like, I don't have, I did like skits and stuff in high school, but that's not, I mean, it's
yeah,
kind of acting, but not really acting. Um, because they'd be like, short things. I never did like full blown productions or one. I did one full blown production. But, nowadays, so I started in September and all I could get was like nonfiction because I don't read monotone. I mean, you heard how I read
yes. You did a
at
very,
least
very good
that.
job.
So, like, I do, there's not as much emotion in nonfiction, but I couldn't. I'm like auditioning in September of 21. I'm auditioning for everything, and all I could get was nonfiction. So I'm like, okay, cool. I want to read fiction. So we're going to start a fiction podcast with public domain books. So I do that. And then in January of this year is when I started landing all the fiction jobs. And since I started doing that, I think I've done 3 nonfiction and I haven't done one since. So and those were all ones from people I had previously done books for that were like, "Hey,
Yeah,
can you do this other one?" And since then, it's been all fiction, and I just keep going. I mean, it's a weird world, and I'm glad that I get to do it, but yeah, part of I have an emotional reason for, enjoying and doing and wanting to do royalty share for audiobooks. My dad and all of his complications was blind, and so he would listen to podcasts, and he never really got into audiobooks, but he would listen to podcasts all the time because he can't watch TV, so he would
right.
listen to podcasts all the time. So, um, I'm like, I have a soft spot for just making it available to, and it's not even just vision impaired people that listen to audiobooks. It's people that, for whatever reason don't like to read the physical copy of the book, or people that um have long commutes to work and so they listen to audiobooks in the car or while they're cleaning their house or whatever. I like, and my intro for this podcast is something like I'm an audiobook narrator that loves bringing stories to life because that's what I feel like I get to do,
Yeah, you
um,
do.
is bring it. Now, the more characters you have, the more difficult that gets,
Yes,
but
I was.
yours,
I
I'm like 9 siblings, so typically most books that
at
I've
least you
done
did it. You did it. Sarah wasn't there towards the end, but there was like those family meals,
with all of them
which all of
talking.
them, all of I got. I yeah. I'm sorry. So I have to say, there's always gonna be a family meal in every book, it's gonna be the thing,
Yeah.
and the family meal in Mason's book is when Nathan, proposes to Sadie, and, I had a couple people have mixed feelings with the proposal because it starts off with Liam and a daddy jokes.
Hey,
It's staying.
proposals
It's
come in all shapes and sizes.
Mason starts it, I'm just saying, and Liam ends it.
Hey,
I
it,
don't
it is
know.
so I feel like I've just broken from my imposter syndrome I'm like clearly and I actually the like last nail in the coffin for my like major imposter syndromeness. I had a um pretty substantial like audio engineer type person come in and help tweak some of my settings and he was like, I'm telling him, I've booked this many books and whatever, whatever. And he's like, you're doing just fine if you booked that many books in that short amount of time. And I'm like, clearly I'm doing something right, especially like, the fact I keep getting hired. It's not like, at the beginning when I first, the first few authors that picked me, it's like, well, maybe it was a fluke and they just, all they had was really crappy narrators audition. And I was just the best of the crappy.
No,
but
I'll be like I said, I had my friend help me listen to you because like
Mhm.
the first when I first did it back in 2021, I had 3 people audition. One was a girl and no, it was 2 and then they had that guy. He didn't actually audition, he just messaged me. So one was a guy, one was a girl. The guy didn't cut it because the scene I sent, it was when Mason comes into Nathan's office and he goes, "Mason, Mason," like he's Nady Poo, you
Yeah.
know, he did nady poo, like, you know how you Stewie, that, like, weird high pitch,
Yeah.
like, for a pig? He did that with nady poo. Nady it was like, it was a
Nitty
big it was a
poo!
yeah, it was really and he instantly I don't think he could have saved himself from that, and I felt really bad. And then the girl had this weird, really bad Southern drawl, and I was like, I never put Southern drawl in there. I feel like if I wanted any kind of accent, I would have said that.
Yeah. Now,
But
I
it
will
was
tell you, there are authors that will say, "I want a general American accent," and then they'll say, "Oh, P.S. This character's Russian, and this character's Southern, and this character's Irish, and blah 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 blah
yeah,
blah." And you're like, I avoid those because I can't
yeah,
do all those.
yeah. But like again, I was like, I'm a newbie, so like I felt bad for like being that picky, but that whole nady poo and that high pitched suit, like calling for a
Yeah.
pig pitch, I was like, "Nyeh." But my friend Melissa, she's a massive audiobook listener. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not an audiobook person. Could you please help me? And she's like, she does really good. I mean, she's a girl reading a guy's part, so there's no getting past that. But she does
Yeah.
really good with it. She does really good with it. I'm like, oh, awesome.
Well, and
she,
I had so review-wise, I don't know, I don't have a whole lot of reviews on any of the books that I've done, but, like, 2 of the
yeah,
books that I did were erotica books, and that's, like, the one bad comment I had was, "Oh, it's a female narrating a male's part." Well, it was a royalty share. You can only hire
yeah,
1 narrator, or
yep,
the narrator's paying out of their pocket to hire the second person, or
yep,
sometimes you get, like, couples that narrate together, but
yeah,
my husband is dyslexic. While he would be great at this and he wants to narrate the male parts in his own book, maybe, still thinking, he doesn't want to do other people's stuff. So I'm like, you'd be great at it, but you don't, it would be a big hurdle for him to be able to do it. So,
it's a confidence thing. I feel like
yeah.
there has I feel like, yeah, as my son's being dyslexic, I'm trying to figure out different ways for him, and I'm learning like it's just a process of figuring any.
Yeah. Well, and you're my second author that said that. So, one of the authors that I narrated the first book in her series so far, her publishers actually who hired me, but then I reached out to the author. So, because I reached out to you via social media, I didn't have to do this because I knew you were you. But
Yeah,
when I get hired through ACX, you don't know who's actually hiring you. So I
right.
will go find the author and on social media and make sure either they're aware that someone is making the book or it is in fact them. They just maybe have a different name or I mean, on
Right.
ACX, you can put whatever name in there you want to as your name, so you never know, and a lot of them, they
Right.
use a pseudonym to whatever, so I had reached out to her, and, so she hadn't heard the audition, but she's like, "I trust my publisher would have picked someone that did good," so I sent her, like I have all my files on Dropbox, so I sent her the link to the audition piece, and her one thing, there's a character named Nanny Kimley, so when I talked to her on here, she said, "All I wanted to know was how you voiced Nanny Kimley's voice because, like, that was my make or break. Like, if she can get that how I had it in my head, this narrator's gonna do great." And I apparently did it how she had it in her head. But
There
then she's like, listening to it, she has no idea who her publisher hired or what the other options were or
right.
whatever. But and that was still relatively early on. I did her book in February or March, so still relatively early into fiction, which I didn't start getting until early February. She's like, she heard it. She listens to audiobooks almost primarily, and she said, yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like an actual audiobook. So
That's what yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel absolutely bad, and that's what I was telling Melissa, like, I feel like a fraud trying to do an audiobook when I don't listen to audiobooks, and that's why
yeah.
I pulled her in because she's an audio bit she loves her audiobooks, and I was like, "Alright, you need to help me."
When I
She's
ask,
like
I have my husband listen too sometimes because I'm like, I listen through all of my audio to make sure that, the words all make sense. And I didn't like sometimes I read what words were on the page, but those words don't make sense together. And sometimes my brain like automatically fixes while I'm narrating. It's like,
yeah,
this is how it should be. And sometimes I'll read it and like hearing myself read it, I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound right. I'll stop, read the sentence a couple times, figure out what it was supposed to say, and then fix it. But yeah,
yeah,
I've had my husband listens, he's a delivery driver, so he listens to audiobooks a lot while he's
yeah.
driving. So I've had him listen a couple times. I'm like, I am so sorry because he's never listened to any of the books I've done before. And
Right.
so like one day I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I need to make sure I'm not crazy and I just like it because it's me and I need to make sure like this sounds okay.
Yup. Yes. I do that with writing. I'm like, "Listen, I'm obsessed with what I just wrote, and I need to know if
I
it's
wrote
not
it.
because of what I mean." Yeah, or, like, is it lack of sleep that I got so excited by this? Like, so I need you to read like
Yeah, that
I
particular one, it was a third person perspective and it was my first third person book. So I'm like, I need to make sure that this doesn't sound too monotone because it's a
it's
detached
hard
third
yeah.
person narrator. And he was like, no, it sounds no, he usually listens to male narrators, but he was like, no, it sounds fine, whatever. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I just need someone who like listens to them occasionally. And I'm like, I don't know, like you don't
Yep.
necessarily want to, be telling the author like, "Hey, I want to make sure I don't sound stupid," because then it makes it sound like I don't know what I'm doing. So
No, see, I think that needs talked about more, like, even this is your profession, like, occasionally you need to outsource just a little bit to make sure 'cause, like, I feel like you do something so much, you get in this, like, weird Autobot, like,
mhm.
robot tone, you're like, "Wait a minute. Okay, am I actually doing this correctly, or did I just get in a zone of"
Yeah.
like, I worked at a factory job, and, like, I'd do the same thing over and over again, and I'd have to
Yeah.
stop, and they're like, "Hey, you missed it." I was like, "How did I mi" you need I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't even if you're a professional, you need occasionally a double check,
Yeah.
and if
Well,
I
my
don't
double
care
check
how
is so I had an entire day last week, an entire day of narrating that I had to completely delete because my mic was literally an inch too far from my face and it made my voice sound tinny. And I'm like it
uh,
had, like, a echoey, metallic-y kind of sound to it, and there's no fixing it at that point, like, you just have to redo it, so I had to, like, message the author, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm still gonna have your book done on time, I just want you to know, like, today was a scrap because the mic was an inch too far from my freaking face," oh, so now every day when I start, I'm, like, measuring, make sure it's the
you
right distance.
you've added that new routine. Yep.
Yep, I have
I
I have a ruler in my booth now, so I can make sure it is exactly the correct amount of space.
alright, so I also do photography, and
Mhm.
I I made the one mistake. I'm really glad it was a friend who was not paying me, and I volunteered
It's
to do
always
their
worse when
wedding.
they're paying you because you wanna make sure you, like,
Yes. Well, actually, I find paying customers more forgiving than friends who are getting a free product. Just saying. Like, I get obsessed with paying customers because they're a paying customer. Not that nobody doesn't matter, but like they paid for
Mhm.
this product, it needs to be perfect. But like I learned this lesson early on. Check your settings on the cameras
Yeah,
because my last shooting was in a dark place and then I went to a really bright place.
and you didn't adjust.
I did not adjust because I'm a manual shooter and do you know what that means? Like I shoot
Yeah.
in manual. So yeah, so I always have to I didn't change it. So like now I'm obsessed with taking at least 3 photos, looking at my camera, like, oh yeah, I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
new
I
routines you
had,
go.
in the same thing, I had a narrator say to me, and he didn't mean it this way because we talked about it afterwards, but what he said was, "Oh, yeah, it needs to be, really, really good if they're paying you up front." And I'm like, Um, no, I'm gonna put out a professional sounding audiobook, whether they're paying me up front or I'm getting paid royalties, because you never know what book may end up in a TV series or a movie one day, and your audiobook is gonna be bought tons and tons and tons of times, and if it sounds like garbage, you're gonna have garbage reviews.
Or
So
like I know this is the big thing now. You don't know what TikTok is going to get viral. You don't
I just
like
had my first contact for an audiobook off of a TikTok video. So, like, put it out there, but you never know
yeah,
what
you just
now, I'm usually just talking in my TikToks, but, you never know what thing, but I'm very, very careful to stay away from, like, I had someone ask for, like, tips and tricks and basically wanted me to coach them, and I'm like, I don't work for big publishers. I don't feel comfortable coaching anyone because I
yeah.
can't tell you how to get hired with big publishers. I work through ACX and I have one other website that emails me as well, but I'm too scheduled out for them. Like their books have to be done in 3 months and I'm booked further out than that. So I'm like, yeah, there and
But
I
also
I felt bad because one of the like managers actually messaged me was like, we really want you to audition for this book. And I'm like, dude, I don't have the time. Like I could audition, but I can't have it done in 3 months. So
yeah, I feel like also there's so many, not to like dismiss like you, but there's so many people out there that they could get those tips and tricks. Like there's so many audiobook
yeah.
narrators on
Well, and
TikTok
I will
giving
point
those.
them to like, here's the ones that I got my information from, and here's the websites that I got my information from. But at the end of the day, I'm like, don't. I started on a $50 mic, and the audio quality wasn't great.
Yeah.
So I within my first, and I've said this several times on here on this podcast at this point, but in my first like 2 months, I made $1,200, and I put almost all of that into upgrading my equipment immediately because I knew $50 mic's gonna put out $50 mic of quality no matter how much you edit that.
Yeah.
So and I
It's
mean, it's the same with writing too, like,
yeah.
you've gotta make sure you have the tools. I'm at the point in my adult life that I generally now audiobooks, I started on the $50 mic because I didn't know if anyone would like my voice. So at the
Yeah.
beginning, I'm like, "Oh." There was a thing that I found that said everybody will find somebody that likes their voice. So I'm like, I'll probably get like, I don't know, 5 people that wanna hire me and that'll be it, so I don't wanna put a bunch of money into this. I'm way, way past 5 at this point. So
Yes, you really do have it. You're a very good narrator.
it's it's weird.
I feel you on that. I anybody like I don't really have an audience. I don't have the readers yet, but from my
Mhm.
understanding, you need more books to get the readers.
Yeah.
You really do. You need the backlist because one book doesn't give them the backlist to really get your
Well, yeah, and that's I mean, you figure once you have a couple books under your belt and I mean, just even into the tips and tricks portion, I guess. Um, Even just getting on TikTok and talking about your book gets it out there. But I know
yeah.
a lot of readers, because I do this sometimes, will wait for a series to be finished and then binge the whole thing instead of waiting a couple years for the next one to come out. But if you're constantly talking about it, not I mean, you can get on there and talk about, your book reviews and your other stuff too, because if you're just pounding your book in people's faces, that's gonna turn them off. But occasionally, oh, hey, I have this book or, the video with the quotes and the page flips and the, whatever little tips and trick of the day is going on occasionally helps.
Yeah, and I did a new thing where I talk about, like, the first chapter
Mhm.
of my book, and I,
Ouch.
like, do it, like, in a weird, like, "Here's the tea about Sadie," and I so we'll see what it does, but, like, I don't the few people that have read my book, this is where I was going, I still go, "Really? You liked it?" Like, it's so I don't know why you liked it. I'm really confused right now. What is it? What? Y
Well, and sometimes reviews don't help either. Some of those reviews are either like I have one, I got a review and they left me like 3-star review, but they don't leave a comment. So I'm like,
Yeah,
what did you not? Because for anybody in any kind of in arts, writing, painting, narrating, voiceover in general, like reviews are, in my opinion, how you grow. So you learn,
yeah,
like someone telling me, oh, I don't like that it was a female narrating a male voice. I can't fix that. That is what it is.
yeah,
But if you say, I didn't like that she did, I don't know, she took too many breaths or her breaths were too loud or she talked too fast or too slow or, whatever. Those are helpful
yeah,
things you can fix. Now, sometimes you'll get contradicting. This person was too fast and this person was too slow in the same
and
thing.
that's when you realize it's a personal opinion.
Well, and also you can speed up and slow down the Audible app. So,
Yeah,
and pretty
yeah,
much any listening, like ours is exclusive to the Amazon owned things because
yeah,
of the royalty share, but I do have other books that have been taken elsewhere. Um, I imagine they all work the same where you can slow them up or,
yeah, I would assume. I'm
yeah, I had
blanking.
one. One
Oh,
say I
yeah,
talk
that's
too slow, and I'm like, "Sir, no." I'm like, "No, I can guarantee you I talk way faster than most narrators should," which is evidenced by the fact that, like, pretty much every book I do will say, "Oh, this should be a 9-hour book based on word count," and I usually make it an 8-hour book. Like, I'll cut in
yeah.
fact, I just finished a book where I cut an entire hour off the book time just because I talk fast.
Yeah, uh,
But then a
no,
nonfiction will usually be longer because you have, like, all the pauses between, like, bullet points make
yeah.
it take a lot longer, so
I think that's, like, with, Heart of Conviction, is it's out there, and I'll never pull it, I'll never change it, it's gonna be out there, but I kinda wish I had more of those critique points, especially, like, with reviews. Like, I
mhm.
see that I got a 1 star and a 2 star and a 3 star with no reviews of why they didn't like it, but, like, with my beta readers and the alpha reader, they never gave me a true critique, and I feel like
You
I
need new
need those.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like,
that's
"I need
why
to
I
find
think
new ones to help critique me."
I know, that's like with so, like, when I'm writing, Mind of Conviction right now, it's like what I'm going through right now, it's like I really need to go out there and ask some people, but that imposter syndrome and that anxiety, it's like, but I don't know if I'm ready to hear it. Like, I need
Yeah.
that critique, I need it because I want the best book possible, and Nathan and Sadie's stories could have been so much better and probably smoother if I had the real critique instead of the yes people, like, "Oh, this was really good. I mean, I feel like you could have done this, but it's really good."
Well, I think too that's, I mean, you can maybe ask people on TikTok for that, but, I
Yeah,
had one author that I talked to that said, just ignore the, like, really big critiques, but I feel like there's a fine line between ignoring the ones that are just they had a bad day that day and
yeah,
left really bad stuff, and then the ones that are, like, bad, but it's constructive, like,
yeah,
helpful for,
constructive, yeah.
"Here's how to improve." Um, but, like, I know me, I'm gonna take everything to heart and, like I do for, when I get narrating reviews, I'm like, "Why did you leave it 3 stars? I wanna know why." Like, did I do something wrong or, like, did you just not like the story or what
I'm
happened?
that's what, like, I do, like, it hurts for a minute, like, "Oh, man, that really sucks," and then, like, you process, I'm like, "You know what? That's, like, kind of true, I really need to look at that," like, it's like a weird, like, process of, "Oh, like, they hate it," and then, like,
But what are
"But,
they
like."
really saying that
Yeah,
could be improved on?
yeah, it's just it's a whole thing.
So, we've been talking for a while.
We have.
So, on do you have any advice for a new author that maybe they write fan fiction like you were doing and thinking about writing their own book, do you have any advice for someone who maybe wants to get into writing or is thinking about writing or, is sitting on a manuscript they don't haven't put out there yet? Do you have any advice for pushing forward?
Uh, Building a team is real. I honestly, I feel like no one talks about it. Like, get your
Mhm.
beta reader and your alpha readers. Like, they don't like it's not, and do it outside your friend group. You need at least one or two people that aren't friends that aren't worried about hurting your feelings.
Mhm.
You need, and don't worry about. I feel like if you have a budget, just do the best you can because eventually you'll get the money. More books come in, more money. You can start putting out the better product and go back and edit your books.
Mhm.
But I don't know, do it. You'll regret it if you don't. Like I as much as I want to put all these books out, at least I put one out.
Right.
I hope to put more books out, but I did it once.
Mhm.
Like,
You've
I don't
you've
know.
crossed that hurdle
Yeah,
once. Makes it a little bit easier next time around.
yeah. But and covers matter. If
Yes.
there's anywhere to, if there's anything, if you, I don't think editors matter, not diminishing that, but like you have to get that person to your book, and that is the cover. And I
Mhm.
don't, if you're gonna put your money anywhere, do it with the
Mhm.
cover. And please, if when you're formatting, put spaces between chapters. Have you read the books with no chapter spaces? Like they're on the same page?
Yeah. I've had to reformat a couple of, books to
That's
make
just the
it work for
okay.
narrating.
I'm just saying, those are my tips. Please,
There
please.
is I can tell if you don't know how to do it, not you, but for anybody
Yeah.
listening, if you don't know how to do that, no matter what editing program you're using, there will be some setting for inserting a page break.
Yes.
Find what that is. Memorize the shortcut key. For Google Drive, I know it is Command and Enter. Well, I'm on a Mac. Command or Control if you're on PC, and Enter will enter a new page so that you can get in there. And then also, if you will set your chapter names as headings, that will
Yes.
also help get your table of contents ready to go.
Yep.
So it's all in there and pretty. These are things that, as a narrator, I've had to format people's books to do. But then, if you do that while you're writing, it's so much easier because then when you go and you're ready to upload and all of that, it's already all there for you.
Yeah, see, I'm OCD and my friends laugh at me like you can no, I'm not fixing it later. I'm doing it now. And it's
Yeah,
one less thing for me to worry about. I do my heading 1 for my chapter and I do my heading 3 for my name and I move on.
yeah. Now, the author that I'm editing through her book right now, I'm doing it as I am editing through. So, like,
Yeah.
that tells me where I am. I can just click on the beginning of the next chapter that I need to go through. But, um, all right. Well, those are pretty good tips. So,
Yeah.
what is the near future plan for books? You're planning on getting one, possibly two done by the end of the year. Do you have a plan, a time frame for when they're going to edits?
Um,
Or when you're hoping to have them
fall.
in the
I'm
fall?
hoping the fall that they'll both be in edits because I'm working them in tangent. So like I'll spend
Okay.
like 2 hours on one and 2 hours on the other
Okay.
because they both speak to me at the same time. So you have mind of conviction. Wow, speak, which is Mason and Cynthia, and then I have I don't understand, which is Tobin and Bo, which is a male suspense
Mhm.
mystery whodunit kind of thing, uh, which is done in third person. It's been really fun doing something that's different. I'm hoping like it's they're different. I'm hoping to have those out by no later than like November. I want them out this year.
Okay.
Then next year, my plan is to have Mickey's story, which is Home of Conviction, which would be Mickey and Katie. After Mickey and Katie, give me a second. It is Madison and Toby. I'm happen to have those two in 2023. I'm trying not to do more than two books. Like as much as I want to do, if I do more than two books a year, that'd be great. But
Mhm. Well,
until
and
I can get
that's
my real,
researching myself, I'll let you know that, like, it doesn't matter how many books now, people will always demand, like, I want the books faster once
yeah,
they, like, get to liking the books and all that. But, like, as long as you have a schedule and you stick to it, or you become that author that, like, all of your readers know, like, she's gonna publish when she feels like publishing. But just
Yeah,
saying, like, "Hey, I'm gonna get 2 books out a year." There might be bonus books too, but I'm definitely getting 2 books out a year. They know what
yeah.
to expect.
Like, my problem is right now is scheduling the writing time with my young kids and being a
Mhm,
single parent. It's been a struggle getting that writing time in
mhm.
because, like, all my writing time is at night, and as a parent, by the time, like, it's 8, 9 o'clock,
You're tired.
you're tired, you're
Yeah,
mentally tired.
yeah.
Like, you just wanna turn off, and especially when you're planning a suspense thriller, you need your brain on.
Yes.
But, like, so
Or your
2023.
suspense scenes seem really stupid.
Yes, they were, because my goal is, because I'm one of the, I don't know about you, but I always figure out who done it in the beginning of the book,
Yes,
like,
yes.
immediately. So my goal is I don't want anyone to know. So it's
Hey,
really hard
if
because I can.
you there are very I was just telling my husband this a couple days ago. There are very, very, very few books that
Yep.
surprise me, but there's a book called The Silent Patient by Alex, really long last name, and
I love that. I'm sorry. That was perfect. That's
I think it starts with an M, but it's a really long last name,
yeah.
and I got it for Christmas, like, 2 years ago, and I'm like, I read through it, and by the time it gets to the twist, like, it's going along, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure I know what's happening," and then the twist happens in that book, and I'm like, "Where
What?
did that come from?" Like, if you can do that for me, because I will normally guess ACOTAR that I'm reading through right now, for example, I knew who she was gonna end up with in the first book. Like, in
Yep.
fact, I'm going through singing lessons to help with, like, vocal health and all of
Yeah.
that for narrating, and I was talking to her about it, and, like, I ended the first book, and I'm like, "Okay, but I know who she's gonna end up with, I'm ready for that to happen," because, like, I could see that in the first book when it's just,
Yep.
like, not even romantic teasing, but he would just, like, poke fun at her, and I'm like, "I know how this is gonna end.
Yep.
Get me there." But I like and my husband, I'm like, I read a lot of romance, I read a lot of fantasy, like, they're gonna end up together. It's the journey is always different. I
Yep.
like the different journeys, the different characters. I like, when you throw in an extra dynamic, like you get like the BDSM books and you get
Yep.
you know, there's the, shifter aspect in there. There's, I like the journey to get there. They locked eyes across the room. That's going to end up being the couple at the end, but how do they get there? How do they get from being the enemies to the like
Yeah.
major couple that everybody talks about? Like I like the journey.
Well, because, like, with Tobin and Bo, I threw in there that Tobin also, it's like, has a slight supernatural aspect. So Tobin can see ghosts, and he can also see a whole history of a person. But he hates the gift, so he, like, buries it down, so he doesn't
Yeah.
use it to the full scope.
Mhm.
So I have to also work around, why hasn't he guessed who the killer is?
Yeah.
Because he should just know. But, like, I'm talking to a couple other author friends about it, and she's like, "Well, he hates his gift, so why would he know? He would never really use it unless he's forced to, unless it's, like, in his face at that point." I'm like, that is true. Thank you for that loophole. I'm gonna move on
I
now.
mean, at that you could even throw like little he sees a snippet totally steal this if you want to. He sees little snippets, but he just shoves it away because he doesn't wanna look further at the little snippets. He just
Yeah,
doesn't want it to
yeah, because
happen at all.
he absolutely. And then I throw in a ghost in there that absolutely annoys him. That's supposed to be like his
That's the
spirit
best.
guide. He's gonna be the spirit guide, but Tobin doesn't want any of it. He's like, he lives on the streets. He's a street person, and he doesn't want any of it. He just wants to live his life and take care of the kids he's gathered together from the
Mhm.
street. That's all he wants. And he's drug in to the middle of this murder mystery. And then, of course, there's a detective who's Bo, and that just works.
Well, it sounds like you are busy, so any further parting words for I mean, you're a newbie author, but any parting
Yeah.
words for helping anybody, become an author, maybe a tip someone may not have thought about being a, author that's been writing for 20 years and uses the same cookie cutter storyline?
You know, I really wish people, I'm gonna take an example. There is an author, and I absolutely love her work. I pretty much read everything she puts out, but at the same time, I have to go take breaks in between her stories because
Mhm.
she writes the same characters. They aren't different. It's a
Mhm.
different plot line, it's a different story, but the characters are the exact same. If you're writing a different plot line, you need a different characteristics for your characters.
Mhm.
I know it's a big
Diversity.
struggle. Yeah, like so they're very sarcastic characters, and I love that. I love sarcasm, especially done right, especially between main characters that are falling in love. But if you continuously do that and every single character that you bring no depth,
Yeah.
you bring so the awesome storyline. Like, I love this plot. I love how different it is, but the characters are exactly the same characters from the story. I feel like I'm reading the same story,
So
but it's not.
think so as you write more books, think, "How can I make this different from the previous one?"
Yes.
I feel like especially if it's a series, how do I build on like, for me, reading series, um, like, each book in the series should build. It should always
Yeah.
be more intense than the book before it.
Yes.
Um, it should constantly build. Eventually, like, in a fantasy, you're eventually gonna get to, like, the big battle at the end or the big,
Yep.
like, the big thing at the end.
The
Um,
yep.
so you gotta figure out how to or think somewhat plan. Even if you're a pantser, you can have somewhat of a plan in place for how is the next book going to top the book before it. And in a series, like yours is a little bit different because it is a
They're
series,
technically
yes.
standalones.
Yes, it is a series, yes, in that they're all part of the same family, but they
Yeah.
are standalones. And while you're going to miss some of the family dynamic if you didn't read the other books before, you could read the book and kind of get caught up.
Yeah.
Um, But if you're writing a, same characters are the main characters throughout the entire series, what
Yeah.
situations can happen to build on what happened
Yeah.
before?
But I'm not gonna name the author because again, I really do like their works, but like they threw out a demon series. 2 main characters, totally different series. Then they had another series that had like a killer in it. But you couldn't tell from the demon series and the killer series, they don't overlap. They're totally different worlds, everything, but the characters were exactly the same, except
Mhm.
different names. That like you didn't that doesn't bring I don't feel like that's range. Like, yeah, it's totally different plot lines and everything, but the characters are exactly the same. And someone who binge reads authors' backlogs, that kind of like ruin I don't know. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
I want to read your characters. Like they need to be different characters. I feel like that's a thing. Like I hope when I'm writing Mason, you don't think Nathan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Well,
the character.
Mason was kind of like the cocky little brother, at least, like, that's the
Yeah,
voice that I kinda gave him was like the cocky little,
yeah.
like,
And
"I'm
when you,
famous and I know it, and I can just
yeah,
hire people to do this instead."
yes, yes. And when someone actually reads his book and you're no longer with Nathan, and when you read Mason, I hope you get that same energy of, you know what I mean? Like your characters need to be different no matter like you need different voices
Yeah.
for your character. They can't just because it's a different series. Like I don't
This
know.
this is why I track, voices that I use. So I have, which I don't know. I don't know that we talked about me doing the whole series or not, and it's fine if you want other people to do the whole series,
Yeah.
but regardless, I track, I keep track of these character voices so that if you do want me to do the next book in the series, I can use that character's voice for that character to a certain extent, because I know one of the males I used a really deep voice, and that hurts my throat. So,
Might have to
uh,
rethink that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I have another author that it's, mafia books, but they're kind of interconnected, but not, but I told her up
Yeah.
front, like, I can't like, I'm gonna have to basically use the same voices because I can't maintain and she from the very beginning was like, yeah, I get she tried to narrate her own books and decided there's no way she was ever gonna be able to do that, so
I never
now
even thought about the
now
idea.
she pays other people to do it, which I'm totally cool with, but, yeah, I'm contracted on this I think it's a 5-book series following these different mafia characters, but yeah, I was like, I can use the same voices in books, but, like, using, one character's voice to do a whole book that's a really hard to make voice is rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a female who doesn't have a deep voice, doing the deeper voices is rough on the throat.
Yes, I believe that because when I gotta use, I call the God voice on my kids because my husband's not here right now. I feel that because like boys, just no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. I think we are about done, but I
Yes,
wanna say thank you. I know we had to reschedule, but thank you so much for finally getting on here,
yeah. Oh,
and I
thank you
wanna
for having me.
say good luck with your writing. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Good luck getting your writing time scheduled, and I'm sure I'll see you around TikTok.
Yes.
You have a good rest of your
You too.
Saturday.
You too. Bye.
Bye. As Allie got older, she loved stories with shifters. Her favorite were werewolves. The first known story of a werewolf comes from Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, Lycaon was a king of Arcadia who, in the most popular version of the myth, tested Zeus's omniscience by serving him the roasted flesh of Lycaon's own son, Nyctimus, in order to see whether Zeus was truly all-knowing. In return for these gruesome deeds, Zeus transformed Lycaon into a wolf and killed his offspring. Nyctimus was restored to life. Despite being notorious for his horrific deeds, Lycaon was also remembered as a culture hero. He was believed to have founded the city Lycosura, to have established a cult of Zeus Lycus, and to have started the tradition of the Lycian Games, which Pausanias thinks were older than the Panathenaic Games. According to Gaius Julius Hyginus, AD 17, Lycaon dedicated the first temple to Hermes of Cyllene. Today we'll be reading the portion of Ovid's Metamorphosis that covers the story of Lycaon. Don't forget, we are also continuing the original story of Beauty and the Beast on our Patreon. The story of Lycaon. A bad report about this age had reached our ears. Hoping that this report was false, I went down from lofty Olympus, and though a god, I walked on earth in human guise. It would take a long time to relate how much evil I found everywhere. The report was not as bad as the truth. I traversed the mountains of Menelaus, frightful with the hiding places of wild beasts, and the pine forests of chilly Lycus and Cyllene. Here is the throne and the hostile palace of the Arcadian king. I went in at the time when the late shadows were drawing on the night. I gave signs that a god had arrived, and the people began to worship me. At first, Lycaon ridiculed the pious offerings. Soon he said, "I'm going to find out by means of a guaranteed test whether this is a god or a mortal. The truth will not be in doubt." He prepared to kill me at night while I was heavy with unexpected sleep. He settled on the test of the truth, but he was not content with it. With a knife, he slit the throat of a hostage sent from the Milesian tribe and softened his limbs, though not yet fully dead, by boiling some of them and roasting others in the fire. As soon as he placed this meal on the table for me, I used my avenging thunderbolt to overturn the palace on its penates. They were worthy of their master. Lycaon himself fled in terror. When he had come to the deserted reaches of the countryside, he howled and tried in vain to speak. As a result of his own nature, his appearance took on a kind of madness, and he exercised against the flocks, the lust for slaughter to which he had become accustomed. He began to take pleasure in blood. His clothes became fur, and his arms turned into legs. He became a wolf, but he kept vestiges of his former self. There was the same grayness, and the same fury about his face. The same eyes shone in his head. He had the same appearance of fierceness. Thank you for joining Freya's Fairy Tales. Be sure to come back next week to hear Gabriel's journey to holding his own fairy tale in his hands, and to hear one of his favorite fairy tales.